All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Attorney General's office. I want to introduce those who are standing here with me. On my right are Chief Goncalves from the Pawtucket Police Department, Colonel Manny from the Rhode Island State Police. To my left is Chief Ramsey from the West Greenwich Police Department, and Deputy Attorney General E. Goldstein, who is a real significant part of our team and helps inform every decision that we make. This afternoon, this office charged by criminal information Pawtucket Police Officer Daniel Dolan with 4 felony counts arising from an incident that occurred in West Greenwich just over a week ago on July 23rd, 2021. Those charges are as follows. Count 1 is assault with a dangerous weapon, a firearm, resulting in serious bodily injury. Count 2 is assault with a dangerous weapon, a firearm. Count 3 is assault with a dangerous weapon, a firearm. Count 4 is discharge of a firearm, specifically a .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol, while committing a crime of violence, that being assault with a dangerous weapon resulting in injury. As alleged in the information, these charges arise from an incident in and near the parking lot of Wicked Good Pizza in West Greenwich on Wednesday, June 23rd. As alleged in the information, Officer Dolan, then off duty and driving a Ford F-350 Super Duty truck, followed a car occupied by 3 men, 1 driving and 2 passengers, into the parking lot of Wicked Good Pizza. The car occupied by the 3 young men came to a stop, as did Officer Dolan. As alleged in the information, Officer Dolan got out of his truck and approached the car occupied by the 3 young men, displaying his badge. As Officer Dolan approached the car, the driver reversed his car to get away from Officer Dolan and shifted gears to drive forward and out of the parking lot. Before the driver was able to fully exit the parking lot, Officer Dolan fired 1 shot from his service pistol into the driver's side window of the car, striking the driver in the upper left arm. As alleged in the information, the driver drove a short distance before pulling over. Coventry Police, West Greenwich Police, Rhode Island State Police responded to the scene, as did Criminal Chief Stephen Damrock from this office. Under the use of force protocol reissued by this office last year, this office, the State Police in West Greenwich, pursuant to that protocol, immediately commenced an investigation. Officer Dolan has been charged with these 4 felony counts because, in the view of this office and the other members of the investigative team, his actions, as alleged, at the place and at that time were not justified, notwithstanding his occupation as a police officer. Additional information regarding this incident, including accounts of what happened from the perspective of various witnesses, including the defendant himself, may be found in the information package, which is a court document and is publicly available. I want to be very clear. The information package serves one purpose. It is a charging document. In fact, it is our most common charging document. And I say this because I think there is at times mystery as to how this office operates. We filed 3,401 informations in 2021, and we filed 3,896 of them in 2019, all in Providence County alone. Just by contrast, the grand jury being an alternative means by which this office charges cases, 72 cases were charged by the grand jury in 2020, and 162 were charged in 2019. As a charging document, an information is only an allegation, and as such must establish probable cause that a crime was committed and that the defendant committed it. Officer Dolan, like all defendants, has a right to challenge whether the information meets that standard. If he decides to do so, it will happen in Kent County Superior Court. Like all other defendants, Officer Dolan is presumed innocent. Among his constitutional rights is a right to trial by jury, where this office will be required to prove his guilt on these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. The case will now move forward in Kent County Superior Court. The defendant will be arraigned in that court on July 16. I want to thank Colonel Manny and the Rhode Island State Police and Chief Richard Ramsey and the West Greenwich Police Departments and our team for working really quickly to bring this investigation to where it is today, thoroughly in a really fast period of time. For those of you who have seen the information package, and it is a public document, it consists of 207 pages. That's a lot of work to do in just over a week. I asked the investigative team to move quickly, and they did. Not only did they move quickly, they moved thoroughly, and I'm grateful for that work. I also want to thank Chief Goncalves and the Pawtucket Police Department for their cooperation as we investigated this incident. At every step of the way, when we needed information or asked for information from the Pawtucket Police Department, they provided it unhesitatingly, and I'm grateful for that. And so with that, I'll take questions, if there are any.
General, did Officer Dolan state at the scene what was the nature of which he was going after the 3 teens?
John, look, I'm not going to try this case in the press. The information package is what it is. You can find additional information in the information package. That is a formal court proceeding. I'm not going to comment on the details of this case or the facts of the case beyond what I've already said. We're going to try this case in court, and that's where we're going to litigate it. Not here in the press and not in the newspapers. We're going to do it in court now that this case has been charged. It's a serious case. There are 4 felony charges. The stakes are high. We're going to try this case in a courtroom, which is where it belongs.
General, without getting into the details then, can you say why you chose to charge him?
Because I believe, that under the circumstances and under the facts as we've determined them, I believe that his actions were not justified at that time and in that place, notwithstanding his occupation as a police officer. Now, we're going to have to prove that at trial, and we're prepared to do that.
Any update on Officer Dolan's current status with Pawtucket Police?
I don't have an update on that, no.
Just administrative leave as it stands last week.
I don't handle administrative matters on the Pawtucket Police Department.
But can the chief speak?
I understand, so when I'm done answering the questions you have for me, you can ask the chief whatever questions you have. But I don't handle administrative internal matters. We investigate crimes in this office, and when we conclude that we need to bring them, we bring them. And when we conclude when we don't, we don't.
Is the use of force policy only for handgun discharge, or would it be for other forms of force as well?
I'm sorry, Steve, I don't understand your question.
If a police officer were to use pepper spray, would that also qualify as a use of force policy, or is it only when they discharge a handgun?
No, the protocol applies when excessive force, allegations of excessive force are made.
Thank you.
Other questions?
General, was part of your investigation speaking to Officer Dolan? Was he part of your investigation? Did he cooperate?
Yeah, Tom, I mean, I think if you go look at the information package, you will see that in that information package, there's at least one statement by Officer Dolan. So, you can read that and draw whatever conclusions you want to draw. Again, our job is to put in that information package probable cause to establish that a crime was committed and the defendant committed it. That's what it is. It's a charging document. That's the way we charge cases in the state system. It's different from the federal system. So that's how we charge cases over here most of the time. But I'm not interested in analyzing those reports in the public space. Suffice it to say, we believe that there is probable cause that a crime was committed and that this defendant committed it, as alleged in the information package. We'll proceed to go forward to try to prove those allegations beyond a reasonable doubt.
Can we ask Chief Goncalves some questions?
You sure? If everybody's done with me, then I will.
Just one more question. The investigation going to be the same if the guy was off duty or on duty? Same level of investigation if the police officer was on duty or off duty?
It's the same level of investigation in every case that we do. We don't investigate less depending on whether the person's wearing a uniform or not. We investigate every case, in my view, appropriately to get to the bottom of what happened, and then we make whatever charging decision we have to make. Any other questions for me before I step aside? Okay, with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Chief Goncalves. Chief.
Thank you, Attorney General. So I have a question. Councilwoman Melissa DeRosa said that she had made some complaints and other residents had made some complaints about Officer Dolan in the past to you and to Mayor Gribian. Can you talk about what those complaints were and how they were handled?
So today we're here to talk about the incident that happened last Wednesday. Any complaints that were made, part of an internal affairs investigation, are separate and apart from what we're here for today.
But you're here now. Can you just answer those questions?
We're here for today to talk about what happened last Wednesday. Again, any incidents that happened in the past were handled in the past. If incidents were filed as a IA investigation or use of force, they would have been thoroughly vetted at that time.
Chief, not everyone, because of the fast-moving nature, has been able to see the document. So can you tell us what was the detail and hours that he was working on last Wednesday?
So anything part of the case right now is going to be part of the Leopold process, so I can't speak specifically to the details of the case because we cannot make any public statements regarding Leopold.
Can you confirm, is Officer Dolan in Rhode Island?
Is he in Rhode Island right at
Yes.
this particular time?
Yes.
I would have to, I'm not sure. I
Is
don't
he in
know.
Oklahoma?
Well,
Well, Chief, why don't you let me take
Okay.
whatever statements, whatever questions you have about sort of the status of the case. John, my understanding is that he's not in the state of Rhode Island. The reality is that he will have to appear in Superior Court
Okay.
on July 16th. Now, look, you may have a question, why is he in Oklahoma? I'm going to tell you why. Well, I don't know why he's there, but I'll tell you why he was, from our perspective, allowed to go there. Every time a police officer uses force, okay, the first question is, was that use of force justified? You have to determine that. So when a civilian uses force on another civilian, a lot of times it's pretty clear early on that a crime was committed. When it comes to a police officers are allowed to use force. So the first question is, was this use of force justified? So on the night in question, there was no basis, in our view, to make a charging decision. I mean, we're here on day 8 because it took day 8 to get us here. And I will tell you that that's a lot faster than is typical in most cases. So, whether or not he's in the state or not, he's been charged and he needs to be in court on the 16th like every other defendant who's charged in this way. Are there other questions?
General, specific to that, did he leave the day after?
I'm not sure exactly when he left, Parker, but I know this. My understanding is he had a pre-planned vacation. My understanding is that he left before we were in a position to fully understand exactly what happened here. So just to give you a sense of what it is we need to know to make a charging decision, right? In the indictment is a charge, assault with a dangerous weapon, serious bodily injury. Well, we need a doctor's opinion regarding what kind of injury occurred before we can make that charging decision. Okay? If we want to know, for example, what happened on the highway, we've got to pull highway footage. We've got to analyze it. If we want to make a speed determination, we have to do that. All of these factual questions go into determining whether or not the officer's conduct was reasonable, because it is a different standard from a civilian. An officer has the right to use force, except in those circumstances when doing so is unreasonable. And to get to that answer as quickly as we did, nevertheless took time. So we can't very well tell somebody when we don't know what the result is, don't do this or don't do that. We don't have any authority to do that. But suffice it to say that this defendant will be there on July 16th, or there will be additional action which follows.
General, you mentioned something just then. Is there highway footage of some kind of altercation between the officer and these 3 young men?
Look, I'd ask you to go back to the information package. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, what's in that
Well,
information?
you just said something, so I'm just looking for clarification.
I did, but I'm not going to interpret anything beyond what's in the information package. All I'm telling you is that the steps that we need to take to reach a conclusion require gathering evidence. And it's not as simple in the case of a police officer who's authorized to use force many times in the first instance, whether or not that use of force is justified.
In general, are previous IA violations or hearings admissible in a court when dealing with an issue like this?
It depends, Steve. It depends. Sometimes prosecutors think they are, defense attorneys think they are, and courts make decisions. Some say yes, some say no. Really depends on the case, the circumstances of any prior allegations, et cetera, et cetera.
General, could the chief just explain what Officer Dolan's status is now?
Sure. Chief can answer whatever questions she's prepared to answer.
so once the charges were filed, he will be switched to suspended without pay pending a legal process.
Thank you.
Can we ask Chief Ramsey a question, please? Chief, last Wednesday night, I interviewed you at the scene, and you mentioned that he had observed something on the highway and that he was pretty shaken up about it. Do you stand by those statements, or do you want to elaborate on that?
So that was it was in the beginning stages of the investigation. At this point, if you check out the information packet, I think you'll have the information that you want.
Did you, and again, I'm at a disadvantage, I haven't seen it, but did you drug test him or give him a breathalyzer at the scene?
I didn't personally know.
Yeah, look, and again, I want to step in. We're really, again, this defendant is presumed innocent and has a right to a trial. This is not a situation. So, for example, you may say, well, the Attorney General, when it came to the case in Providence with the moped, you stood here and you talked to us for an hour and a half. Big difference. In that case, we didn't bring a charge. In this case, there's a charge pending. Like, it is our goal at this point to pursue those charges to a conviction, otherwise we wouldn't have brought them. It is not to the benefit of achieving justice in this case for me to talk about this case beyond what I already have, right? If this were a case in federal court where I spent a lot of time, what you'd have right now is an indictment. It would be 2 or 3 pages and that was it, and we'll see you when the trial starts, okay? The information package is fair game because we have to establish probable cause to charge in this way.
General, is it possible there could be more charges coming?
I can't say, John. Look, let me put it this way. You know, we were able to gather the facts we needed to make the charging decisions we felt were appropriate. Now, anything could change, but I feel comfortable about where we are in the investigative process. And look, that's a tribute to the great work of West Greenwich and the state police to get us to this point. They worked really hard. They were really hard. I mean, I think if you go back and look at that information package, you know, to an objective observer, doing that much work over that short period of time is a tribute to the men and women who did that work. Okay, anything else? All right, it's good to see all of you. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.